Hello everyone and welcome back to AustinPlus, where today we are talking about the Oppenheimer movie, a movie I haven't visited in a long while, and it's one of my favourite movies out there, because Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer was praised one of the greatest historical films ever made, earning critical acclaim for its performances, storytelling, and emotional depth. But was it actually an accurate depiction of history? Like every historical drama, the film balances documented facts with creative storytelling. So how much of Oppenheimer actually really happened? And does the movie succeed as the portrayal of one of history's most influential scientists? Yeah, so today we are answering the question if the Oppenheimer movie was actually a good depiction of history. I've watched it a fair few times, I've done a lot of reading into the time period and when this actually came out, and I've also read a lot about Oppenheimer himself. So, without further ado, let's get into this. There's no denying that this film was set on a historical foundation, and there's no lying about that, because many biographical films, obviously need to have some sort of background, but Oppenheimer is built upon the extensive historical research, drawing heavily from the biography book, The American Prometheus. The major events, including the Manhattan Project, Trinity Test, and then obviously Oppenheimer's role as the scientific director and his later security clearance hearing, are all rooted and documented in history, but are all documented in this very book as well. While the film compresses timelines and simplifies certain events, its overall narrative closely follows the historical record. So I think that's a good starting point for now. I think the second most important aspect is obviously the portrayal of the character himself, Robert Oppenheimer. I think obviously the greatest strengths of this film and the greatest aspect, I would say, is the depiction of Oppenheimer. I mean, Cillian Murphy did it amazingly. He's an extraordinarily complex individual rather than just being a traditional hero and villain, which is actually a question that many people ask. Is he a hero or is he a villain? Let me know what you think. But besides that, he is shown to be a brilliant, ambitious, charismatic, politically controversial, and deeply conflicted by the consequences of his work. Now, although some conversations and personal moments are dramatized, that's without a given with a movie like this, the emotional contradictions presented throughout this film closely reflect the historical accounts from colleagues, family members, and then obviously Oppenheimer himself, because I'm gonna go back to this book again, which is obviously the American Prometheus. The book does have a bit of passages from from Oppenheimer himself. So if you use that and then obviously do some interviews, read up in history, read about the time period in which this actually takes place, you gradually get a deeper understanding of the character and the person he actually was. Now, the film is all about the Manhattan Project and the development of Manhattan Project and how it was led by J. Robert Oppenheimer. And there was two major things that happened in this movie. It doesn't go into the details of the Cold War and then obviously the first atomic bomb. It goes into detail about that before the Nazi Germany. However, it mainly focuses on the development of the Manhattan Project and then the Trinity Test. The film recreates the Manhattan Project with a remarkable attention to detail, from the scientific collaborations at Los Alamos to the immense pressure of developing the world's first atomic bomb. Now, the Trinity Test sequence is especially faithful in capturing the tensions surrounding the experiment, because although certain visuals and dramatic choices are naturally heightened for a cinematic effect, I think the showing and how it's set up is how they typically would do so for this type of experiment. So they got that down, and people were like, "Oh, I know Christopher Nolan doesn't like using CGI." So did they actually get a real atomic bomb for this? No, they did not. Now, overall, the scientific setting and atmosphere do remain among the film's most historically accurate achievements, and that, I think, is the most important aspect, because that it is. And this kind of leads me into the next part, which is the political drama, which has a lot to do with it, but this is where it kind of gets a little wishy-washy. Because much of Oppenheimer's focuses was not on the bomb itself, but it was about the political battles that were happening during World War II. And obviously the amount of people that tried stiffing him up. But the conflict surrounding Oppenheimer's 1954 security clearance hearing, his relationship with Louis Strauss, and then obviously growing fear of communism, were real events based on the time of the the film, which was obviously, say, the Manhattan Project as well, and the Cold War. But however, the film simplifies some political rivalries and combines motivations to create a very clearer narrative, making the complex historical conflicts more accessible without entirely abandoning the factual accuracy. So, like, in terms of political stuff, they really dialed back on that, which I think is a good thing, because the whole idea is about Oppenheimer and about the Manhattan Project and the contributions that he had made. But the political drama, you have to remember, this film actually started off with speaking about the political drama, so that's the first thing you go with, is it does set the tone very weirdly. Now, there is criticisms in this. Yes, I love this film. The film is my top 3 films of all time. I love Christopher Nolan's stuff, and Oppenheimer was up there, and I still love physics, and obviously Oppenheimer was one of the pioneers at the time. So this film does have a very strong place in my heart. That doesn't to say that there isn't critics about it. There obviously is going to be. Now, the movie does leave out some things. Now, before I even get into this, the film was 3 hours long. The film was 3 hours long, and I know there probably wouldn't have been enough time to add that. I would say you could have probably extended it to 3.5 hours. If you had put this stuff in and shown the impact, or taken some of the political drama stuff out or left more in. I mean, if anyone's watched The Killers of the Flower Moon, you'll know that that is about 3.5 hours long. So I do believe, they can show stuff like that. So potentially it could have been an idea for this. But every historical film must decide what to conclude and what to omit. The Oppenheimer is no exception in that matter, because you can't have all of his history from like the day he was born to the day he died. I mean, that film would be a fair few years, but the movie spends relatively little time examining the experience of the Japanese victims during the points of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Now, the wider geopolitical consequences of the nuclear weapons or the contributions of many scientists involved in the Manhattan Project were also dismissed. Now, in terms of how it affected Oppenheimer, I think was shown very well. But by focusing primarily on Oppenheimer's perspective, the film intentionally narrows its historical scope to tell a more personal story. And I get that. And people are saying, oh, they should have shown the impact and they should have shown how it was utilized. I understand why, but I do understand that it is also an Oppenheimer movie. And the other thing is, as well, although the film remains unusually faithful to the history, which is something you don't really see with biopics these days, some things are exaggerated or some things are not added in, Christopher Nolan still employs the artistic license through condensed timelines, reconstructed conversations and symbolic imagery, and dramatic editing. But many private discussions between historical figures can't actually be verified and necessarily imagined, while certain events are rearranged to improve pacing and emotional impact. Yes, they can't really go and ask the people, oh, what was it like? Because some of them are not here, especially when it was developed. But these choices are common in historical dramas and general, then they do still generally serve storytelling rather than altering the central historical facts, because then it's not a historical film, it's a what-if situation. I know this is a stupid video to go up and say, oh yeah, it is. But I don't think people realize the scope of how much this film was shortened. There could have been so much more cinematic things that people would have wanted to see. However, this was a very accurate and very, very historically verified in terms of biopics. Now, that is the art of Christopher Nolan. Next week, I'm doing a review on The Odyssey. I've officially seen it twice. Christopher Nolan is an artist, and he is probably, he is the greatest director of all time right now. Not right now, ever. So, for him to come out with a film, like both of them, one based on scripture, and obviously historical events, is fantastic. But history versus historical drama is the last thing I'll delve into, because Oppenheimer highlights an important distinction between the documentary side of things and a historical drama. Its purpose is not to provide a complete account of the Manhattan Project or World War II, but the exploring of the moral, scientific, and political journey of one individual who impacted a lot. Now, rather than presenting every historical perspective equally, the film invites audiences to actually experience events largely through the Oppenheimer's eyes, making emotional truth just as important as factual accuracy. And while it condenses events, dramatizes some conversations, and omits certain perspectives, it's still the portrayal of J. Robert Oppenheimer. The Manhattan Project and the political consequences that followed remains remarkably faithful to the historical record. It isn't a complete history lesson, no. Does that matter? Also no. But it is a historical drama, yes. It succeeds at capturing not just what happened, but why those events actually continue to shape the modern world today. So there you go. But without further ado, folks, that is the end of today's video. I do hope you all enjoyed it, and if you did, please leave a like and subscribe, and comment what else you would like to see on this channel. But I hope you have an amazing day as always, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.
Yeah.